Once again, we have a case where the larger booktube ecosystem manages to put the right book into my hands at just the right time. In my last video, I talked about Lovecraft Country, which was mentioned in episode 2 of the Books in the Freezer podcast. It's a horror podcast hosted by fellow booktuber Stephanie over at That's What She Read, as well as Rachel over at The Shades of Orange. In episode 2, they were talking about horror book to movie and TV show adaptations, wherein Lovecraft Country, of course, was mentioned, but they also mentioned Joe Hill, whose graphic novel Locke and Key is getting a third kick of the can after a failed Fox TV show, and a promising looking movie that actually ended up with nothing. So that meant I had to go back and finally finish the series for myself. Locke and Key started back in 2008 and over a series of over 35 individual issues finished up in 2013. The entire run is available in 6 beautiful volumes that collect the works of author Joe Hill and illustrator Gabriel Rodriguez. And after finishing this series, I can say unequivocally this joins Y the Last Man as one of my favorite all-time long-running graphic novel series. It opens up hard and fast. We have high school guidance counselor Rendell Locke brutally murdered, his family barely surviving the encounter that leaves one of the perpetrators dead and the other in prison. It is a brutal and bloody sequence that removes any and all doubt as to what we're getting ourselves into here. This is clearly a horror story, and people are going to die horrible deaths. After the funeral, the Locke family moves across the country to their Key House estate in Lovecraft, Massachusetts. We have the widow Nina Locke and her 3 kids, Tyler, Kinsey, and Bodie. They're the Locks of the title. The keys are scattered all across the Key House estate, and they are magical keys that can turn any door into a portal that will take you anywhere, or turn you into a ghost, or open up your head so you can remove feelings or memories. And as a magical system, I love that magic is tied to a physical object. These keys can be lost, found, stolen, and they're clearly central to an evil that's resurfaced that has sinister plans. This was an incredible ride. Gabriel Rodriguez's artwork almost strikes you as cartoonish when you start off. It seems at odds with this horror theme. You expect something more along the lines of what Jock did with Scott Snyder's Witches, which is also an incredible graphic horror comic. But Rodriguez is a master of expression. He makes great decisions as far as angles go, and the level of detail is beautiful. I mean, every panel is super clean, super interesting to look at, and every page is clearly a labor of love. Rodriguez manages to draw action really well, and he even manages to incorporate scares onto the page, which is super hard to do in a comic book. And as an added bonus, he even gets to channel some Bill Watterson in an individual episode called The Sparrow, which is pitch perfect right down to the dialogue, which is a credit to author Joe Hill here. I mean, making the transition from comics to novels or vice versa isn't exactly easy. They require different ways of thinking about plot and dialogue, but Hill is one of those author unicorns that manages to do both. Nosferatu is still one of my all-time favorite horror stories of all time, and he gets a twofer with this fantastic graphic novel. He is working with a huge cast of characters, but they all matter. Bodhi is youthful, chaotic innocence. Nina is more than her alcoholic widow cliche, and even beyond the large family, you have the mentally challenged Rufus, or Kinsey's friends, Kavanaugh, Jackie, and Jamal. They all matter, and they will all collectively break your heart. Hill manages to infuse everyone with warmth and emotional depth, and I grew to love these characters. It's no mean feat to build an emotional connection to characters in a horror story because it's far too easy to overplay your hand and telegraph your intentions. I mean, everybody knows when they come across that world-weary detective that's mere weeks away from retirement, heading out for one seemingly innocuous last call. Well, you know what's in store for him. He might as well be wearing a red shirt. But Hill doesn't fall into those easy traps. And even the quote-unquote bad guys are fleshed out beyond their more heinous deeds. I mean, Hill clearly loves these characters and imbues all of them with a richness and depth without dragging the story on. So clearly the apple doesn't fall far from the horror tree. By now you probably are familiar with the fact that Joe Hill is the son of author Stephen King, and he even manages to sneak in a tongue-in-cheek homage to King himself, along with nods to Kelly Link and Warren Ellis. This whole run was so good, I don't even know if we can make the transition into TV. I mean, Hulu has got their work cut out for themselves. Hill and Rodriguez work beautifully together. They are just made to work together. And it very easily could seem a little cliched and ridiculous as it makes the transition to the screen. So, fantastic graphic series. I highly recommend you check it out. I am a little pissed off that Goodreads doesn't let me review the entire run collectively as one review, and instead I'm forced to review each individual volume separately. I mean, the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts in this case. But at the same time, it lets me add 6 books to my year-end reading count, which pushes me well past the 1 book, 1 week reading pace. I know, 1 book a week. How is it I even have a booktube channel? Anyway, we're nearing the end of 2017, and how's your reading year been? Have you found yourself reading more this year, escaping into books to avoid the dumpster fire of the world around us, or have you found yourself too distracted and your reading numbers have gone down? And before the best of lists start trickling out, what was your favorite read of this past year? I'd love to know in the comments below, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a great week of reading. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.